Arsenal fans, here's what I would say. They just retain belief. There's so much bloody football still to come. There's so many twists and turns. Look, also this, you would prefer to be top of the table than playing catch up. They can go, they must go 7 points clear against Southampton on Friday.
From the Men in Blazers studios in the crap part of Bedford, New York, and the crap part of Hollywood, California, it's the Men in Blazers podcast presented by the GFOPs at Camarena Tequila, the most awarded tequila in the world, Roger.
We're back like the Boston Marathon. How you doing, Davey?
I'm doing okay. I've been all over this great country on college tours with daughter number 3. Wow, what an experience. Went to the South, Rog. Was in your favorite city, Washington, D.C. Not your favorite city. Chicago's your favorite city, but Washington, D.C.
Top 20.
Yeah, well, maybe higher than that for you. Had a great tour with my daughter and now ready to re-engage. Sorry I missed last week. Nothing seemed to happen last week in the Premier League, so I missed a good, quiet week.
Luckily, everything that happened last week, exactly the same happened this week. So we get to cover 2 weeks' bases in 1 hour of show. And there's a lot of seeming angst. There's a lot of agony, a lot of football, a lot of twists and turns, a lot of darkness. So before we get into it, Arsenal fans, you know what I'm talking about. Spurs fans, you too, different. Chelsea fans, different again. Everton fans. I wanted to open up with a raven that we received. By the way, thank you, GFOPs, old and new, and so many new, writing in to our mailbag, meninblazers@gmail.com, bringing ideas, relating to things we've said, a lot of creative feedback. But we got one particular raven this week from a GFOP that I think is important to read up top, because everything that follows this will put it all into perspective.
Yes, Rog, Justin Kuhn from Greenfield, Indiana writes, I just wanted to say thank you for your podcast and content over the past week. I've been listening for about 7 years or so now, and you guys produce some of the most suboptimal crap I've ever heard. When I'm not supporting Arsenal and laughing at Spurs' remarkable ability to self-sabotage, or my local Indy 11 club, I teach social studies at a small rural high school in Henry County, Indiana. One of our students passed away after a car accident on Monday, April 10th. Her death has hit our school hard, as she was the child of a fellow teacher involved in many extracurricular activities and was an incredible bright light at our school that almost everyone knew and loved. As for me personally, this is the first time I've dealt with the loss of a student in my teaching career, and it's been exhausting to manage my grief and the grief of many of my students. I want to thank you for your content, because it has lifted my spirits this week as I continue to process this experience. This week has reminded me of Jurgen Klopp's observation that football is the most important, least important thing, and I have you both to thank for keeping me from periods of absolute despair in recent days with your humorous analysis of the Premier League scriptwriters' plot lines this season. I appreciate the work you do, and I look forward to hearing all you have in store, no matter how crap it may be. Much love and much gratitude, Justin Kuhn from Greenfield, Indiana.
Justin, to you, to all the pupils, to all the families in your community in Greenfield, Indiana. Honestly, Dave and I, none of us at MIB can imagine what you're going through. We wish you strength and love to better days ahead. And may football always be there as an emotional support for all of you in times of darkness.
Okay, Rog, before we get to the football, or what I'm covering these days is private equity. A massive announcement from Men in Blazers World Headquarters.
On, Clear Lake!
It is. Why look at football through the lens of football when clearly nearly everybody I know is just looking at it as a private equity event? A massive announcement from Men in Blazers World Headquarters, Rog. We're talking about the Men in Blazers American Football Awards presented by Bud Light, a series of awards designed to celebrate the league we love in the country we adore. What I love here, Rog, is this did start with a joke that you and I were making with each other about in the years before there were really many, if not more than a handful of American players in the Premier League. We started this joke about the American Player of the Year. Now it's really coming to life with our friends at Bud Light. A series of awards designed to celebrate the league we love in the country we adore. We're celebrating what has been an incredible footballing trip around the sun by launching these awards in which we are asking you, dear GFOPs, to pick the winners.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. People are like, yeah, you can't just start an awards thing. And then I'm like, well, didn't FIFA do that like a couple of years ago with the best?
I know.
And then I thought, maybe we should call ours the worst. But
Yeah.
that is like, can you imagine me giving like an award to Harry Kane? Harry, we voted you the worst. And that wouldn't work. But we are bloody excited.
Did the best start with a little joke between two mates in a subterranean bar in Geneva? No, I don't think it did. We've been joking
Dwight
about this
McNeil,
for years.
we're giving you an award, the worst. Oh, thanks, mate. It's been a whole season. It's not, you don't win the worst as an individual. It's really a team effort for me to win the worst, says Dwight McNeil. But yeah, we are genuinely, this idea is so beautiful. Yeah, and by the way, there will be a women's awards too at the end of the NWSL season after the World Cup. These awards are intended to really capture the passion, the wonder of the surging American fan base here, and just the devotion to the global game. We're going to be asking people to vote for our American Player of the Year. That's the Player of the Year that American fans have savoured most, as well as our American Player of the Year award, which is the American player in the Premier League that our fans have just loved watching the most. We're going to announce the nominees today, Monday. Be all over our social media, and tomorrow. Look for the announcement there. And Davo, most importantly, we believe in democracy. Big tent democracy. Tell the people how they can vote early and often.
I can't believe that you're assuming that the American Player of the Year and the American Player of the Year are going to be two different people, Rog.
Well, Brad Guzan, is no longer on top of his game, dominating the world as he wants to. But please God, soon it will be white. It'll save us a lot of money in award smelting.
Yeah, text coming in from Todd Burley. Are you not doing the American Owner of the Year? We'll have to look at that. All voting.
Michael C. Jordan of Bournemouth. Arise!
Oh, no, we're saving that for the worst. We're saving it for the worst. All voting will be done via our Raven newsletter, Rog. To be able to vote, you must subscribe before this April 21st newsletter is distributed. You can subscribe on meninblazers.com. Do not miss it. And Rog, you somehow are launching yet another podcast, Road to the Cup, with I'm sorry to tell you right now, Road to the Cup with Becky Sabran.
Yes, that is right. And I'm so bloody excited about this podcast. First episode, we just taped it last week. It's a regular pod with the people's captain, Becky Sauerbrunn, who is, I think regular listeners know just how much I revere her. She really is an incredible human being on and off the field. And in the lead up to this World Cup in New Zealand and Australia, as the US women's national team attempt to go back to back, just like we did with Tyler Adams, the US men's captain last year, this podcast will give listeners insight into the mindset of an elite footballer preparing for the sport's biggest tournament. And Becky, so bloody smart, such a wonderful storyteller. And we're going to create something very special together over the next couple of months when we really don't take that opportunity for granted.
Yeah, lovely woman, brilliant footballer, brilliant football mind. The first episode drops this Saturday right here on this very podcast feed. Rog, you can kick us off today with a toast. Rogelio, would you do the honours, please?
Yeah, I want to raise my third first Bud Light of the day to another American, Gio Reyna, who strolled on as a substitute against Stuttgart at the weekend, scored a late banger, pouncing on the ball in the box, finishing calmly and coolly his fourth goal as a substitute since January 22nd. The American dream melts steel beams. His sixth goal on the season, now tied for second most by a US international in a Bundesliga campaign. He is just 3 goals behind record holder, our friend, the one and only Eric Winalda, the great striker and broadcaster, whom you may know from his work as key member of the Reyna family angry at US men's national team WhatsApp group at the last World Cup. Godspeed to Gio. Can't imagine what he's going through. A season of injury, of personal trauma and chaos, and he just keeps on scoring to more and to better days ahead for all.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful to see him playing so well, Rog. Amidst all of the distraction. And you can read more about Gio and all of the baby eagles, screech, screech, abroad in our American States United newsletter, which flies Wednesdays and is designed to tell you everything you need to know about Americans abroad in easy-to-read, digestible format. Subscribe at meninblazers.com. Okay, to the Premier League football, Rog, and a massive twist in the title race. West Ham 2. Arsenal 2. Mikel Arteta came in off that 2-2 draw with Liverpool. Started 2-0, got to 2-2, desperately needing to keep the relegation-threatened Irons at bay to stay 6 points clear of Manchester City. And as they've so often done this season, Arsenal got off to a flying start with Gabriel Jesus and Martin Odegaard scoring in the 7th and 10th minutes, respectively. But was that a 2-0 lead too early? After an opening half hour of dominance, things took an unexpected turn after Thomas Partey gave the ball away and Gabriel number 1 took down Lucas Paqueta in the box, allowing Said Benrahma to coolly steer home the penalty shortly after the break. Arsenal had their own chance from the spot. We'll talk about that. But Bukayo Saka sent his penno agonisingly wide left. And less than 5 minutes later, West Ham seized on the opportunity as Jared Bowen latched onto a long ball at the back post and drove one off the turf and in to make it 2-2. Arsenal drop points for the second straight game. They give up a 2-0 lead, Rog, again. And this title race is getting tight.
Relegation zone meets top of the table. We all tuned in to find out how Arteta's mob would respond to that thunderous 2-2 draw, which felt like a loss at Anfield last weekend, the one that had snapped their streak of 7 delirious straight league games won. With that clash at Manchester City looming, there was no safety net. There's no margin for error. But West Ham bruised 3 points off the relegation zone, albeit with games in hand, fresh off Europa Conference play Thursday. Just 2 wins in their last 29 against Arsenal. And they seemed appropriately heavy-legged and heavy-minded from the off. Arsenal hemmed them in, Saka and Martinelli, preventing their fullbacks from even thinking about getting out their own half. Pressure, Arsenal. What pressure? Inside 7 minutes, 5 Arsenal players combining, crevices of space. Ben White again, feels like we say his name every bloody week. Drove a ball, crossed the goal line. Gabriel Jesus, he won't have an easier finish. 4th goal in the 3 games since his return from World Cup injury. And Davo, I'm old enough to remember that injury. It was meant to doom Arsenal, but he's back. And for a moment, it all felt glorious.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful football. They came out like at the London Stadium. I mean, just trying to knock the Irons down. Tough to watch. Some of my West Ham mates were just like texting at me, like just in nightmares over the whole thing, thinking they were going to lose 5, 6, 7-0. And it did get worse for West Ham.
Yeah, within what felt like seconds, it would be too. Martinelli floated a stunning ball across the back post, deep curves, baby, and Odegaard ghosted past his marker, kissed the ball home on the volley. 11 goals on the season, 4 in London derbies. Part of the reason Arsenal have the record they do in these massive grudge games. 9 wins and a draw out of 10 capital city rucks this season, and it felt like they were well on the way to another 2 goals inside 3 minutes. 2 beauties too, and it felt in that moment, it did, Arsenal fans, it felt honestly as if the 2 teams were playing completely different games.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. And the only thing about it though is that Arsenal didn't really press their advantage in that moment. They'd got a little bit distracted at their flicks and their tucks and their inside runs and everything else they were trying to do, and they stopped. I mean, West Ham were dead. They had them right there, and they just didn't bring down the hammer on the hammers.
I mean, I gotta say, there was one team, title holders in waiting. The other felt like, just about to be discarded, a broken body. Get back into the relegation mire, into the pits. GFOP at Kim Misgo tweeted in this moment, "Thank you for making it 2-0 before my flight takes off. Seems like a safe score." And at Kim is go. I just bless you. I do hope that flight landed. If only English had a phrase that goes something like, for those who don't know history, board planes with false Arsenal-inspired misplaced confidence, blah, 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 blah. Because, yes, Arsenal hadn't lost all season after scoring first. Yes, no league-leading team had ever thrown away 2-goal leads in back-to-back games. But Arsenal podcaster LeGrove tweeted it well. In this tweet, what happened for the rest of the game is that City kill off their prey, whereas this young Arsenal side toy with it, play with it, And honestly, that naivete, that lack of a ruthless mentality, it can honestly lead to you being killed. I see the whole second half of the Liverpool game, the tone of it, the style of it, the balance just changed out of nothing. And here again, Declan Rice won the ball off Partey, slightly handsy, slipped in Paqueta, brought down by Gabriel. Third straight game Arsenal have conceded a penalty, and Benrahma wrapped home the ensuing kick. And suddenly, for Arsenal fans, it was like, oh my lord, PTSD to the max. Ever just a spectre of Bobby Firmino's weird body shape for that late equaliser. London Stadium came alive, and West Ham started just to flicker with muscle memory. You know, weren't we all once upon a time professional footballers, they all said to each other as they ran around the field. Honestly, David, it felt like a London derby all of a sudden.
Well, yeah, London derbies do tend to feel like London derbies. It's tough for the London teams. You know, many defenders of London clubs have said over the years it's tough for the London teams to win a Premier League because every team in London, wherever they are on the table, they just want to kill you every single week. So there is some truth to that. I think, though, Arsenal fans are being a little bit harsh on their own team here. Arsenal have this season managed to get out of these situations. They have managed to impose themselves. They have managed to come back late in games. They have managed to do these things. And City have also faltered. We have such short-term memory in the Premier League. We think, oh, it's just the City team from this weekend, by the way, who almost gave up 3 goals to Leicester, which we'll get to later on. It is, Arsenal have been mentally strong, but you know what? It is tough to win a title. This is why the Premier League is so great. No one is going to hand it to you. It is tough. You have to keep on running through the tape and just executing and executing and executing. Yes, everything's tightened up, but Arsenal still have the team and the players to go and do it. Believe in your team. Don't believe this is some inevitable Arsenal fold. Believe in your team.
God, you say it's tough to win a title. It's tough. It's tough to hold on to 17th place. But God, suddenly West Ham playing with the Moyes handbrake off. Antonio running at holding. Ramsdale looking suddenly mortal into the second half. Antonio stopped a Martinelli shot like Dikembe Mutombo. Honestly, not a lot he could do, but rules. And up steps Saka. That duel. That poet warrior. Half man, half star boy. But Lord, up to the penalty, body shape wrong before he hit it, like a player who'd been watching Mo Salah penalty videos, slapped it wide left, as they say in Minnesota Vikings land. Cue global Arsenal surrender Cobra. First penalty Saka missed in 5 in the Premier League. But my Lord, Davo, a miss with just that awful echo of the agony of his penalty at Euro 2020.
Yeah, definitely. What I would say on this, and you mentioned rules, you watch that handball in regular speed, and you tell me that there is something just about the fact that a player can't turn his body to avoid getting it right in the nads. And because his arms, when you don't want the ball in your nads, your arms tend to go in an unnatural position, which is not in my nads. And the ball hits him in the arm from incredibly close range. I know that's them rules, but it is so unjust that that's a penalty.
I don't like to project, but are you fluting a NADS exemption?
Yeah, a NADS exemption. Protecting your NADS exemption.
Let's go to VAR to see if the NADS exemption can be enforced here. Yeah. I think, Graham, I don't know about you, but I think that's a NADS exemption.
Yeah.
God,
I sort of feel like the penalty itself was a little unjust. I feel like, Bukayo Saka is such a wonderful human. He is just if you opened him up, he'd be made of pure gold and butter and sponge cake and beautiful, beautiful things. And I think he knew deep down in his soul that was not just and therefore missed the penalty. That's what I'm going to go with.
But that agony, within 138 seconds, Arsenal felt they had that 3-1 lead within touching distance. Suddenly 2-2. That score again. A ball looped in over the top. Arsenal defender filled with fear. Static. Jared Bowen, English, Taylor, Twellman, looking like it. Nipped in, slapped it down into the turf, bouncing it over, and honestly, slightly through Aaron Ramsdale. Suddenly, it was David Moyes standing erect. I don't like that word in connection to David Moyes. And potent. He honestly looked like Nate Shelley when smiting Richmond AFC. And Mikel Arteta, the fear, the crucible, the melting. how would Arsenal respond? It was a kidney punch in essentially an area of the body that was already traumatised and bruised. A London stadium just savouring every time Bowen tortured the Arsenal backline. Arsenal knew they had to win. They had to match Man City. They were still the team at the top, but they had no choice but to take risks. They pulled Jesus. They flung on Trossard and Jorginho. This past 2 weeks, honestly, has been like, if you watched All or Nothing, and I know you did, Arteta talked about his worst fear, his worst experience. The one he talked about was a word he said that we use in Spanish in cycling when a cyclist is going and looks amazing. And in 1 kilometre, he suddenly looks stuck. He said it's a word called pajada. He talked about how he'd experienced it once at Anfield and his muscles and his brain wouldn't connect. He simply couldn't react. He could no longer move on the field. That feels like what we're seeing, Davo, in the final steps of the journey for Arsenal, often the hardest in life of any part of the journey. Arsenal seem in key moments to experience that thing, Davo, pajada.
Well, maybe in the past 2 weeks, but yeah, I think you still got to believe, but it gets harder. As you get nearer the summit, every yard gets harder. Teams are going to fight you more. It is a difficult thing. I would say that you said earlier on that, Jesus comes in, he scores the goal, he's back from injury. They never replaced him. Look, they can still do it without him. My word, how Arteta would have loved to have looked down his bench and found a different kind of striker option, a Danny Welbeckian, a more direct number 9 perhaps to go to at the end of the game. I think that would have been remarkable for this moment.
I mean, it was the frightening thing if I was an Arsenal fan, and probably for Arteta as he tries to work out what happened, what he tried to do. The difference between this and at Anfield was that all of the changes he reeled in, no impact at all. Arsenal created no clear-cut chances down the stretch. And the game ended with West Ham fans just ebullient singing, "Where's your title gone? Where's your title gone?" And God bless that for a team that have just, by a knuckle, dragged themselves away from the relegation zone. I mean, football fans, the greatest. There's a video we put up on our Instagram where some of the fans started to try and sing Blue Moon, like that just that mentality to sing Blue Moon to Arsenal fans in that moment. We do need to though acknowledge before we talk about Arsenal, West Ham. This was a fearsome performance in the second half tactically from Moyes. Yeah, this was the best of Moyes. His team were a true collective. They were fiery, they're direct, they were cunning. They should be free of relegation worries, and I'm happy for him. He's a remarkable bloke, as Arteta himself discussed before the game. He talked about how Moyes was the manager who essentially resurrected Arteta's career as a footballer when he brought him to Everton. Godspeed you, Irons. But Arsenal, Davo, just an agony. This stat, Arsenal points dropped from winning positions in the Premier League this season between August and March, 4 points. Since April the 4th, 4 points in back-to-back matches. And this felt, to me, as I said, worse than Anfield. To throw points away at West Ham, it just will hurt all the more. It's those hard final weeks of the Premier League season. Anybody who's been there before, Chelsea have won the title. I hate to remind everybody, have won the title 4 times in the 21st century. 4 times total. 4 times in the 21st century. Twice in the Men in Blazers era. And it's hard. At the end, however far you are ahead, or if it's close, it is so hard. The games get harder and harder and harder and harder. You're reliant on something. I have said before in previous seasons, for Arsenal to win the title, there is going to have to emerge another player. You said earlier, we've mentioned Ben White a lot. But there's going to have to be another name who emerges from that Arsenal squad who's going to be their hero coming in. Who is going to step up? It's going to have to be somebody else other than the regular suspects for them to get over the line. By the way, one thing I'd say is they almost lost. They almost lost this game. By the way, at the end, Mikel Antonio had a chance that I would have said he was going to make 7 times out of 10. So it almost was worse. But now, just 4 points ahead. They've played an extra game of City. It is, wow, script writers, nice job. holding out for a hero, Emile Smith-Rowe. Look, Arsenal fans, here's what I would say. They just retain belief. There's so much bloody football still to come. There's so many twists and turns. Look, also this, you would prefer to be top of the table and playing catch-up. They can go, they must go 7 points clear against Southampton on Friday. There are definitely moments that the fans will rue. This game, losing at Everton, drawing with Southampton, now with West Ham. Those are the markers of trauma. But there's still 4-point cushion, one more game played, the goal difference brutal. I went drinking with the Magical Arse blog on Saturday, and he talked, this was before this result, he talked about how, nothing matters at this point. The journey, the process is ultimately what matters. And I do feel in agony, and I tweeted this for Arsenal fans, but they have, when I was talking to Arse blog, really reinforced that sense. What they've seen, this transformation, almost disbelief, moments of magic, of dreams, of players, so many players just coherent, just the cohesion, the joy, the memories that have been made. And yes, the dreams may stall, that could still be a scenario, but whatever happened, those memories, those indelible memories that Arteta and this squad have conjured, humanly, they've been inspiring to witness for me and neutral. And ultimately, I'd like to believe those are what really matter in life.
Yeah, I would say that titles are better than memories, Rog. And title memories are better than either titles or memories. And so it would be nice to combine the two rather than just have one of them. A memory of a title is going to be better than a memory.
I have seen Everton win titles in my lifetime.
Yeah,
I have never had a better memory than Everton beating Crystal Palace at the end of last season, and clinging on to 17th place.
I know, but that's not. Maybe that's what Arsenal should do next season: is be in a relegation fight and go back to the London Stadium and beat West Ham to stay up. We know
I didn't say I want it every year, though. Everton, I didn't want it every year.
Oh. Okay, but now
let's dive into Man City, and we can really post-mortem the big picture.
Yeah, those scenes that preceded those unfortunate events for Arsenal fans, those unfortunate memories. Man City 3, Leicester 1. Pep Guardiola's threshing machines steamroll the Foxes in their first game with new manager Dean Smith in charge. And this one ticked all those familiar sky blue boxes in terms of possession, dominance, and an Erling Haaland double, which ties him for Mo Salah's record of most goals in a 38-game Premier League season with 32. And oh yeah, there are still 8 games left, Rog.
Yeah, the City machine, it rumbled in ominously. 9-goal, mash 'em all winning streak, all comps. The kind of run only City can make, where they blast 34 goals, concede just 3, including that midweek 3-0 cruise over Bayern in the Champions League. And Leicester City is really Manchester City's antithesis in every bloody way right now. A team on a deadly tailspin into the suck of the relegation zone. They've not won in 9 games, all comps. They had a new leader. Pull in case of emergency hire Dean Smith, a gent who last weekend was at the Masters. That's how much he was thinking about returning to football. And he came back with his Manning brother style quarter zip to put some scotch tape over that pothole of a Leicester backline. And it held for all of 5 minutes from a corner. The ball broke to the edge of the box. John Stones, or as GFOP at Johnny DeJesus called him on Twitter, Johnny Bloody Boulders, lashed it. First time into the top corner. Rodri'd it, honestly. Just incredible. A defender a defender so remarkable that Bernardo Silva has named his dog John Stones, which I think is probably the perfect accolade. And City went right back to steak and potatoes, grills to the byline, clipped one across, broken up by the arms of Wilfred and Ndidi. And before the referee could even point to the spot, Erling Haaland had the ball tucked under his arm like the head of one of his enemies, and he lashed the penalty hard and low. David, Grealish and Haaland. I'm trying to start this rumour. Did you read the news story last week? Matthew McConaughey has announced that Woody Harrelson could, quote, be his real-life half-brother. He said, where I start and where Woody ends and where he starts and I end has always been like a murky line. And I'm starting to believe Jack Grealish, 69, and Erling Haaland are exactly the same. They're half-brothers.
If you look just at the calf muscles, I think you could probably advance that argument. But I think once you go beyond the calves, and you get into almost every aspect. Yes, we have a resurgent Jack Grealish in terms of his footballing ability at the end of this season, but it's tough to see that many comparisons beyond the calf muscles.
Half brothers, listeners. And the 25th minute, more City, KDB getting stuck into a tackle, winning the ball, driving right up the gut of the Leicester defence, delivering the triple beam balance weighted ball to Haaland, who clipped it home. Here we are, 32nd goal of the Premier League season, tying Mo Salah's record for a 38-game campaign. He'd be the 12th highest scoring Premier League team by himself right now. And we talk about him every week, Davo. But we can never normalise what we're watching. It's just a matter of time. I do believe this. Watching him this weekend before opponents just go into the locker room and offer him 1.5 goals. We'll give you 1.5 goals, Erling, ahead of the game and hope he accepts that. Think about that, negotiation experts and behavioural economists. Don't you think there's a rational sense to that? Just give him before kickoff and accept the loss, 1.5 goals.
Yeah,
and bite your arm off, wouldn't
it's
you?
not just the goals that he's scoring against you that hurt you. It's the threat of the goals that he's going to score that just constantly preoccupy every defensive midfielder, every centre-back, every wing-back. It is just every goalkeeper. You just think about him for 90-plus minutes for the entire game, and he destroys the way you play football.
Yeah, he was yanked off at half-time, put into cotton wool for the Bayern Munich tie, replaced by Alvarez. And really, for much of the second half, it was really like a 45-minute outright Citizens Brigade improv audition for Peter Drury and Graham Lizzie. They both had the unenviable task of talking over what was essentially for large swaths what felt like a training exercise. And as usual, Drury delivered, pulled out, I don't know where from, a story. Do you hear this one, David? Jack Grealish went to an Elton John concert, and so did I, he added. Love that. Peter Drury just rocking out to Elton John. And then he added, they were both there, but only Jack Grealish got mentioned from the stage. Somehow Elton John did not mention the words poetry, Peter Drury. But David, you can just imagine Greals just going mad for a bit of Mona Lisas and Mad Hatters, right?
Yeah, Greals to Watford rumours. they're gonna start right now.
God, it's a tiny dancer in my hand. Pep, am I the tiny dancer? Is that how it works? Am I the tiny dancer? What do you think Greals' favourite Elton John song is? I'd love to. Somebody needs to ask Greals this week to go a bit deeper. Everyone
likes your song, Rog. I feel like perhaps he's more a Yellow Brick Road, but he probably doesn't understand his so what's the road yellow? Was it bricks? Bricks are usually on the pavement,
I like the idea of Crocodile Rock. I like a crocodile playing a guitar. That's so very funny. Yeah. No, Greals is definitely Saturday nights all right for fighting. That is what I believe. I want that song at my funeral. Oh, David. But in the 75th minute, Leicester sub Kelechi Iheanacho, once of Man City, poked home some corner scraps, 3-1. He hit the post. And minutes after that, Edison called into action, turn away a James Maddison 1-on-1. David, the XG on this game, which will be lost to history because of those wacky late misses, was actually Manchester City 2.09 goals to Leicester City's 2.27 goals. I mean, in truth, Leicester in the course of the game were handily beaten. But fairness, and also for Leicester fans, this is not the game you expected to win. I think 4 of your remaining opponents are in the bottom 8 entering the weekend. Those are the games in which Dean Smith must and probably won't get results. City, meanwhile, 10 straight wins all comps. Pep's team, like a miler, entering that final lap with just another gear they can flick on. Bayern this week in the quarterfinals, Sheffield United in the FA Cup semi-finals. And then, do I need to mention it, Wednesday, April 26th, actually City's next Premier League game. That Mecha-Godzilla tussle with Arsenal looms. And Opta's Premier League predictor model, Davo, today gave Manchester City 65.6% chance of being champions. How do you, from the wisdom, you've won it many times.
So I can't speak to this. Twice in the Men in Blazers era. I think Look, I said at the beginning of the season, I thought Man City were going to win it at every point this season. I think Arsenal are good enough to win it. This is no insult to Arsenal whatsoever, but I've always felt that City, in terms of the entire squad, the experience of their manager, the options they have coming off the bench, and just the presence of Haaland, I think sometimes we don't do City justice on how good they are everywhere. You know, we just literally just threw out there, oh yeah, Alvarez came on for Haaland. And like, how good is Alvarez? Like, they are just so many options. They've got so much, but still there is a game between Arsenal and Man City. Yes, it's at the Etihad, but that is a huge game coming up midweek, a week and a half from now. And you know what? Yes, I think City will win it. But if Arsenal win that game, if Arsenal even find a way to like get a point in that game, I think we're going down to the very wire. And when you go down to the wire, wow, close sport. It's not written yet. Even the Premier League scriptwriters have not, I dare say, have not written the end of this season yet.
I think they give out many drafts, like at the end of The Sopranos, they put out many drafts to make sure that there was not one true draft out for the media. We have no way of knowing. I will say
that's
this,
what they do. The screen will just go black like 10 minutes before the end of the season, and then we'll have to decide ourselves who won the Premier League season.
Everton. You know, the reality is the stakes are so bloody high. By the way, I was watching Ted Lasso last night, the last episode, and they have a moment where they put up the league table, and God bless you, my mate Brendan Hunt, Coach Beard, he very thoughtfully put Everton in 8th place. And when I saw Everton in 8th place, even on a fake show, a show which is not real, I paused the television, looked at it, a thing of beauty, and just started crying. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I've got to say, the stakes are so bloody high for this. They really are. If City win, it'd be 5 titles in 6 years for Manchester City. Really, the Premier League is the Bundesliga, a one-team league, with that one team under charges of investigation, 100 charges of investigation by the league that is crowning them as champions. If Arsenal are to win, very different optics, 3 winners in 4 seasons. The optics are parity, Davo. Those really, ultimately, those are the stakes.
Yeah, and Stan Kroenke wins American Owner of the Year, Rog. There you go. He might win the American Owner of the Year as well as American Owner of the Year. That'll be phenomenal. I know.
Josh Kroenke, if you're listening, we know it was all you. Stan Kroenke, don't miss.
Okay. Now into the battle for 3rd place. Nottingham Forest 0, Manchester United 2. Of course, a relegation battle as well. United travel to the banks of the River Trent and move into 3rd, dispatching the tricky trees. The score sheet belonged to Brazilian bottle blonde Anthony, who tallied a goal and an assist to Diogo Dalot, his first ever Premier League goal. But the real performance of the match was that of Christian Eriksen, who ran the show in midfield after getting his first start since that ankle injury in January. I don't think he was bolted on to start. I think he came in when Sabitzer got injured in the warm-up. United go 3 clear of Newcastle. Forest, meanwhile, lose their 3rd on the bounce and sit in 18th.
Yeah, United's injury list, we've got to say, is actually taller than the Wout Weghorst. Lissandro Martinez, metatarsal agony. Varane also out. Rashford. Oh, come back, Marcus. 9 big players out all in all. Sabitzer, as you mentioned, having to drop out right before kickoff, I believe, with a strained moustache. But Casemiro back. Traveling to
that can be, you joke, but that can be very painful.
Yeah, you don't know what part. Was it a second remedial strain? I don't even know. The rehab is really just when you, 1 minute you're dashing, the next minute you're just in agony. And travelling to Forest, 70 days without a win. That City ground there, a cauldron, as it has been from the very beginning of the season. Hectic from the off. Eriksen and Bruno buzzing. You know, United had all the movement, all the passing, the everything. Warped the Forest back line. What they lacked was really the Rashford-shaped finishing hole in that final third. And Forest held out till just past the half hour. Quick transition. Martial won the ball. Bruno fed it back to him. By the way, Martial looks super swole. Respect, bro. Charged in, slapped a shot, which Navas parried. But Anthony swooped in, 2 bobble home. Oh, I think it was his 4th of the season. Anthony to Anthony connection. First in 14 games. Just an enormous relief, because this kid is undoubtedly talented. So he's just 23. We forget that because he looks about 39, Anthony. But he can be so sublime. He can also be so limited, both in terms of being totally one-footed, also his mental focus in the game. But he was a boss. He was a boss on Sunday, David.
Well, I mean, I think my criticism of Anthony is he makes terrible decisions. He's got so much talent. He makes terrible decisions on, whether to shoot or whether to pass. And the decision is always to shoot. It's almost never to pass. Fortunately, he made 3 terrible decisions early in the game and was yelled at very hard by his teammates and probably from his bench as well. And that made him suddenly start making great decisions in this game. It's the best game I think he's had in a United shirt, certainly away from home in a while.
Yeah, second half, credit Forest. They did make a fist of it. Awoniyi coming close, but left with that grin of grimace. As United began to set siege, corner after corner, many of them inventive. Keylor Navas, CONCACAF Thunder, just save after save. What a masterclass. What a pickup for Nottingham Forest to have that icon in goal. But even he was unable to keep out. Dalot, a fine interchange between him and Anthony, who, credit him, claps the defence, somehow fed his man at high speed through a thicket of legs. 65th appearance for Diego, 50th shot, first ever Premier League goal. Dude had saved up 7 celebrations for it, one of which was telling the travelling fans, effing told you. I don't know what he was telling them. 50 shots it took him to score. Effing told you. God bless you for your optimism. I'd love to know. Effing told you ... Davo. Complete the sentence, Diego. But a comfortable win for United fans. Revelled in every moment. Clean sheet with that C-line partnership. Going to be very key for them down the stretch. Maguire and Lindelof. All those injuries. Anthony buzzing when they needed him. Jesse Lingard, they had come on as a late sub for Forest. Gave him a standing ovation. 3rd place. Clear now. FA Cup semi-final. Europa League quarter-final. Second leg ahead. But Forest, Davo. City ground. Fortress no more. 3rd bottom. Equal Everton, who are ahead on goal difference. But that running. Liverpool, Brighton, Brentford, Chelsea, Arsenal, in a weekend in which the whole of the bottom 4 lost this weekend. This relegation race, it's really about praying that there's 3 teams worse than you, right?
Yeah, well, we've never covered the relegation battle closer in the entire history of Men in Blazers, Rog. We know the positions, we know the goal difference, we know the remaining fixtures, and it is, I must say that I've done exactly the same thing. I've looked at the run-ins because I was starting with the assumption that Everton had a terrible run-in, and they don't. Everton's run-in is not great, but Forest, it's looking very, very tough for them as well. They do have goal scorers on that team.
They got some bloody good players on that team. I mean, it is like, I am getting to the point where I do not expect Everton to get another point this season. And then it just becomes, will any of the 3 below us get a point? That's what you're cheering for. That's why we watch.
Yeah, fascinating to watch. Okay, one game that will have made Arsenal fans feel slightly better this weekend, Rog. Tottenham 2, Bournemouth 3, a 95th minute winner from Bournemouth's 21-year-old Burkina Faso international Dango Ouattara received the ball on the left-hand side of the box, absolutely put one of the league's best defensive midfielders, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, on skates, cutting inside and finishing past Hugo Lloris to cap a bonkers game. Bournemouth win their 2nd straight and are up to 14th, 6 clear of the drop. Spurs, meanwhile, miss a massive opportunity in the top 4 chase. They stay 5th, 3 of Newcastle.
God, Spurs, how do you follow up a relief-filled referee-aided victory over Brighton with total carnage on the field and the feeling of fermenting revolution in the stands? As Spurs, possibly, and I'd love to be told I'm wrong on this, possibly the highest placed team ever with no permanent manager, the potential of a top 4 challenge, and just misery, just misery everywhere. There's just such a dislocation between the surface and what lies underneath. And this one, really the curse of the club's social media admin. The club before the game ill-advisedly tweeted out, late drama last time against the Cherries, referring, of course, to the reverse fixture back in October. Spurs, you'll remember, 2-0 down before roaring back to win 3-2. Bentancur, 92nd minute goal. And watching that game again, the October game, I just realised how different the world felt. And this is part of the Spurs agony, just where they've come from. It's not where they are, it's where they've descended from. And that moment, that Bentancur 92nd, watch it again. I mean, this is before Spurs became possibly the Premier League's greatest banter club. And in this one, result ugly, but so were many of the scenes leading up to it. Davison Sanchez booed almost every touch, the touch of a scapegoat, and then booed so heavily as he was substituted off. Hard to watch. Calls for Dan Levy to step aside, singing Pochettino's name over and over and over. And on the field, the players just dropping deeper and deeper every time they took the lead. The dramatic ending, Danjuma scored an equaliser in the 88th minute. Every single Spurs fan I knew then texted me to say, still plenty of time. We can do them again, like we did at Bournemouth. Here we go. We are Spurs. This is what we do. But Spurs, Davo, first Richarlison blew a sitter at what felt like the game's death. 0 goals in the Premier League on the season from that gem. We still love you, Richie. And then Højbjerg couldn't keep up with Utara, who finished so sharply. 3-2 cherries, last kick of the game. And Davo, Spurs, credit them. The question, how low can you go? Spurs, always lower, always lower.
And the elephant in the room, or the elephant in the stadium, is Conte, Rog, and he was right. And that's what everybody who's watching the game is. Everything that Conte said on the way out about this club, about its mentality, about its players, is that he was right. And so for Tottenham fans, it's a terrible thing to face up to, because they're now accepting we have deep underlying issues at our club, within our culture, that we've got to do something about.
Yeah, I mean, and as a result, just the apathy of agony that is just crushing the fan base. Spurs suddenly seem to be a club that, have a manager that no one believes in, an executive without a strategy, who over the past couple of seasons, since Pochettino, has just chased fool's gold to try and join the true elite by life hacking his way there, which you cannot do in elite football. And no plan whatsoever. That's possibly the great... What is your plan is the thing that most Spurs fans are screaming at the moment. But by the way, God bless Bournemouth, team of wonder. That shrewd January transfer window, which they added players like Utara, designed to support the excellent Solanke, forge the Cherries into just a run and gun, irresistible counter-attacking team. But this was a day of darkness for Spurs. One summed up by White Sox third baseman Jake Berger, who blasted an enormous 6-inning, 2-run shot on Saturday. The ball went 402 feet out to left field, and he told the media, I was pretty upset about Bournemouth beating Tottenham today, so I had to take out some aggression on the ball. Out of darkness, cometh light. And for Spurs, Newcastle away next weekend. Can they find a semblance of confidence before then?
Wow. Amazing. Okay. Villa 3, Newcastle 0. Rog, whatever you said to Unai Emery, well, it worked, because just about 48 hours after you interviewed the Villa boss for an interview, dropping on our YouTube soon, his villains go out and hand the Toon their worst loss of the season. The opener from Jacob Ramsey, followed by a brace from Ollie Watkins. They do the business here. Terrific young players they've got on that team. Watkins now has 11 goals this calendar year, the most in the league. And Villa, Rog, don't look now, but Villa have won 5 on the bounce and are up to 6th place, just 6 points off 4th place Newcastle.
Hanks must just be skipping around the house.
Hanks and Prince William. Hanks and Prince William.
Their group chat must just be going bonkers. I mean, this was for reals. Howe versus Emery, the Saudi transformation project against, to me, one of the stealth, most profound in-season transformations I've seen in modern Premier League history. You've got to remember, Aston Villa was 16th and 3 points off the bottom when Unai Emery arrived. That was 178 days ago. And he's turned the team from relegation fodder into really true European contenders. It's just like watching a new manager bounce to the sword. And no player is more emblematic of the changes that Emery's brought in than Ollie Watkins. Scored twice under Steven Gerrard, but under Emery, found the back of the net 11 times in his past 12 games. And here, he utterly destroyed Newcastle. 2 goals, an assist, with England manager Gareth Southgate watching. Just real vision. He burned down the left when he needed to, played through the middle. Davo, Jen scoring like a West Midlands Erling Haaland.
Yeah, Ollie Watkins fantastic player. He's so direct. He scores so many different kinds of goals. And I must say, Southgate's probably watching Jacob Ramsey as well. Like they've got a series of very, very good players coming up at that club. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful football. Confident, very strong from front all the way to the back, but they've got a World Cup winner in the net. Amazing stuff.
As you mentioned, I filmed with Unai Emery, was it last Thursday? And we talked specifically about Ollie Watkins. He said he'd been given Watkins videos of strikers who thrived in his system in years past. And he said Watkins just works harder than anybody around him. And Emery has also worked out how to get more players closer to him at more times. And that's what's truly unreal to me about the Villa transformation. One that happened mid-season. Without the pre-season campaign to get Emery's ideas about, but he's changed. If you remember how Villa played under Stevie G, they were just long balls, slap happy. It was just hit and hope. I mean, it was dire. And Emery, same bloody players on that field, but he's got them playing possession football, audacious possession football, willing to play the ball through crevices of space. And that transition, just the decision-making he's been able to conjure, that to me is what I just look at and utterly revere. Emery asked if this late push can continue. Is top floor a possibility? Not now, he said, not now. Europa League, 6 points behind Newcastle, but they have played more. They have a worse goal difference. Aston Villa and Europa League. Wow, Emery is a Europa League specialist. That would be some reward. It's been like watching really like the greatest episode of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy of all time. The transformation is that fundamental.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of what you're talking about is that one-on-one work that he's done with Ollie Watkins. This is a team not playing in Europe. They lost early, I think, in the FA Cup. They lost to someone, I think Stevenage they lost to in the FA Cup, like really early. And they haven't been distracted by any competitions, and they've had a lot of time on the training ground to work on these things. And even though he came in, as you said, mid-season, he has just done an absolutely phenomenal job. The right manager for the right club with the right group of young players coming up at the right time. Look at that. Wow. What an amazing, amazing thought. And, with that, we go to This Week in Private Equity. Chelsea 1, Brighton and Hove Albion 2. Frank Lampard's return to Stamford Bridge as caretaker manager, coming off back-to-back losses, and he gets a mouthful of seagull, Rog. Despite early Brighton dominance, it was Chelsea that took the lead when Conor Gallagher's deflected effort looped past Robert Sanchez to end a run of 4 games without a goal. Nice little Mudryk assist there. But from that point on, it was all Brighton. The South Coast outfit drew level just before halftime when Danny Welbeck, everybody will know, one of my favourite Premier League players ever, rose to head home a Schaffes of a Pascal Gross cross and then took the lead off a goal of the season contender from 19-year-old Julio Enciso, who unleashed a Paraguayan pile driver for the winner. Brighton are in 7th place with glorious dreams of European football on the South Coast becoming ever more vivid, while Chelsea's season of interrupted sleep and adapted PowerPoint presentations to the Clear Lake board continues.
Premier League smartest team visit arguably their currently most stupid on a day in which Frank Lampard managed his first game at Stamford Bridge since he was last fired as club manager at Stamford Bridge, with Clear Lake Capital in their press release praising him as a Hall of Famer in the press release, which I don't think they fully understand just how clueless that makes them sound. David, we've not really talked on the pod about how you feel seeing Frank come back. To me, I realise I feel a bit sad, like that it's come to this for Frank, like that he's kind of like being used. This is where his managerial career's got. He's got the time to become essentially a casino greeter who's already kind of in Ted Lasso territory, talking about believe. But God bless the Chelsea fans. They did their part. They unfurled a welcome home Super Frank banner. And I've got to say, he looked like he had a bit of bounce in his step when he came down that tunnel with his post fits, wet hair and club shop trackie. Even with those disappointing losses in the first 2 games, Davo, in the Davo heart, was there some degree of comfort seeing Frank return to essentially his childhood bedroom?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I have the same feeling. I feel bad for him. I think this is a this is a club, a football club that is so broken, where the confidence in the players is just so diminished. It is just, and every story one hears from Cobham and from the sort of corridors of Clear Lake are just really just darker and darker and darker. And this was a fool's errand. And unfortunately, his managerial career was in a place where, to get a chance to be caretaker manager, there was almost nothing to lose. And there still sort of is nothing to lose. He'll always be a legend with the Chelsea fans because of his massive, massive achievements as a player. He was a Hall of Famer in terms of the way he performed for that club. And also the great job he did when he came in, with those young kids, many of whom, my God, I wish we still had a Tammy Abraham. I wish we still had a Dom Solanke. I wish we still had a Tamori. All the players we gave up who Frank ushered in that amazing season, debut season, when he took those kids to fourth place. Even what he did with Christian Pulisic. He's been the best Chelsea manager for the young American as well. So yeah, I feel sad for him. The hair's going, Rog. He's got problems in sectors 1. I noticed point 2. I noticed point 3. We didn't get a good shot of point 5, but I believe it's going there too. And this must be tough. He loves the club. He loves the club. That is one thing I would say about any other criticism of him. He loves that football club. And I'm not sure I can say that about too many other people who are there other than Thiago Silva.
He does. God, it's fascinating. When you say Frank's got nothing to lose right now, that's where his managerial career sunk. Essentially, my head said, apart from his dignity. And then I just realised that, Todd Burley must have had a drink with him one night and be like, okay, Frank, can I sign your dignity outside of the transfer window? How much do you want for your dignity? So I can take a big poop on it from a great... I mean, God, it's hard. Last week I talked about how Frank is essentially Chelsea Billy Martin. He now seems, after this week, just like watching... English Jeff Saturday. And rather than try, this is what I didn't understand, rather than try and drill his first choice team for the Real Madrid Hail Mary to come, Lamps made 6 changes. We even gave Pulisic a start. Poor Frank just wanted a goal, essentially rubbing dry sticks together from interchangeable front 6, 7 possible candidates, try and get one, stop the headlines like Chelsea spent millions and their best goal scorer they signed was their manager. Brighton now, darlings of this Premier League season, a team midweek that Pep Guardiola called the best team in the world at playing the ball out the back. And it looked from the off as if those words were utterly true. They flooded forward. Chelsea, yes, finally scored a big boy goal, deflected strike from Conor Gallagher, CG25. Mudryk, he's very fast with the assist. Big boy fast, goal. Yeah, first goal in 4 big boy games, but then that guy Welbs in for the injured Evan Ferguson with a towering header, level things. Cut to Frank Lampard, Davo, just got his Everton face on him. And then almost like a Cockney Rod Brindamore doing a line change. He brought on Kova, João Felix, Ziyech, Reece James for Pulisic, Enzo, Fofana and Sterling for what's been called the most expensive substitution in world history. Did you have any hope in that moment? In that moment, they were watching what you were watching, 1-1. Did you feel like, yes, these guys, let's go?
I must say, to be fair to Frank, because the commentators harped on the changes he made, a lot of these changes are forced through injury. He would have loved to have played N'Golo Kante. He can't play N'Golo Kante. Reece James still has very delicate hamstrings, and he doesn't want to play him the entire time. So he's forced into a lot of these changes. And that Tuesday, this is where it's come for Chelsea, that Tuesday night game, tomorrow night's game against Real Madrid is still their best chance of salvaging anything out of this season, and they're 2-0 down to a team that came to Anfield and beat Liverpool 5-2. So it's really saying something that he does have to protect his players for that game, and I actually understand it. Watching a Chelsea team and thinking about the great tradition of Chelsea football and that spine and that dominance, Chelsea have had a bunch of games this season where they've dominated possession and been unable to finish. To watch this team at home at Stamford Bridge out-possessed like that in midfield, it was just something to behold, and it really is a statement of where this has got to. Our best player, Rog, was Mudryk. That is really my other statement, which is remarkable. He was Chelsea's best player on the day. He's actually been told, you know what, you can cut inside occasionally and use your speed running the other way, not just on the left. But that is how bad it's got.
He's fast. He is. Just 9 minutes after Frank rang in the changes, the moment of the game, 69th minute, nice, 19-year-old Paraguayan, Julio, Enciso, who cost Brighton just $12.5 million from Paraguayan club Libertad, a gent who come on himself for an injured Joel Feltman in the first half. And here, he just lashed. He lashed one. He laced it. He blooded it. It was a strike that was hit so hard, so cleanly, that the ball appeared to have absolutely no spin on the replay. I love that. A strike that was perpetually rising, and delirious scenes followed. And Ciso running around like a Paraguayan Austin Reeves shouting, I'm him, in Spanish. Danny Welbs putting the kid on his back in celebration. Welbs now probably out for 4 to 6 weeks now, but worth it for the crack. And Davo, if I was Enciso, with that capability, I'd shoot every bloody time I touch the ball. Last week it was Wolves, Nunes. This week Enciso. Everybody's scoring bangers against the Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a beautiful goal. Once again, João Felix, how many times has he done this season? He just runs into traffic down... he's done it on the left side and the right side and straight down the middle. He runs into traffic, gives the ball away, and leads to that moment. And you know what? Premier League players will punish you at this level. And this was a fantastically taken goal. It was hard for me not to scream and cheer as he jumped up on the hoardings, in front of his fans. What a moment for the young man from Paraguay. Beautiful, beautiful goal.
What a day for Brighton. What a team they are. Score honestly kind to Chelsea. Could have been 4 or 5-1, 64% possession, 24 shots against that team. Is worth Brewster's millions. Proof football is about far more than just splurging bloody money on big name players. There's a great piece, if you want to see the Brighton story, by Tarek Panja in the New York Times about how they do it with a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. They're always thinking about replacements, even when their players, their managers are surging. It's a very strategic approach to football. Not is only the front office is different to Chelsea, but the football they're playing, Dave, as their fans screamed to Frank Lampard, you're getting sacked in the morning. It's joyous football, probing, positive passes, movement. They're not scraping for results. This was their first ever win at Stamford Bridge. But what's amazing is Chelsea have tried to strip every asset Brighton have had. They've taken their best players, their manager, their coaching staff, even their head of recruitment. But it's Brighton that took all 6 points from Chelsea this season. I watched them. My old school teacher, Mr. Stott, who was an arsehole, used to say, bullshit baffles brains, lads. It's the only truth in life. Brighton against Chelsea is proof brains can baffle bullshit. But tell us how you're experiencing Chelsea. Lamp's third loss in 9 days. We were well beaten in the basics of football, he said.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the team look like a disaster. Collectively, international players of great quality just look bereft of ideas and bereft of fight, bereft of press, bereft of winning tackles. The number of tackles that this team are losing, it is unbelievable. And I thought actually in midweek, you might not agree. I don't think many people would agree with me. I was actually encouraged by signs against how they played against Real Madrid. I thought they showed a little bit of fight when down to 10 men. I thought they showed a little bit of guile playing away against one of the best teams in Europe. But this was just a hopeless performance. To perform like this at home in front of the fans. The amazing thing to me about brand Chelsea is that people are still going and singing for the team and cheering and rolling out tifos. It's unbelievable. But this is a disaster. Forget about the disaster in football terms, Rog. And we can always look at a team when they're winning and say, oh, they're playing joyous football and everything they're doing behind the scenes is making it work. When football is working, you look like geniuses. But it can pass so fast. So enjoy this, Brighton fans. It's brilliant right now. It can pass. For Chelsea fans, as miserable as it is, it will pass. There will be a moment when this will come back.
There will be.
But that's just in football terms. But in private equity terms, Rog, this is why.
Yes, that's what really matters.
I'm watching private. In private equity terms, this is a disaster. It's a disaster. And anybody, who works in private equity will tell you that Burley is in this and he's convinced Clearlake because these are two separate entities to some extent. Yes, Burley is part of Clearlake Capital, but Burley has bought the money in from Clearlake Capital to go and do this and for him to go and be chairman. The whole premise is based, as much as we joke about the doubling of revenues, it's all based on the doubling of revenues. That is the entire base. So he can, yes, we'll say, oh, all this money, this is what 600 million buys you. But when you amortize those deals over years and years and years, when you have doubled the revenues, it doesn't look so bad. It's all there. But the project goes so quickly. You only have to look at any crisis on Wall Street. Is at the point that the future value of the club is not going to double, that there isn't going to be a sovereign wealth. Look at the situation that Liverpool are in right now. They can't find anybody acceptable to go and buy that club off FSG. When you start failing to build the equity value, which is what most of the Clear Lake guys are in for, you get into a disaster fast. And from a private equity point of view right now, I beg anybody, any sort of low-level worker at Clear Lake who wants to send me the PowerPoint that Todd Burley's people sent to the Clear Lake investors this Monday. I would love to see the PowerPoint that sort of says, don't worry about the results, it's just temporary. The overall project and the doubling of the revenues and the value of the team is still on track. It is not, and it's going to get worse tomorrow night at Stamford Bridge when they go out of the Champions League.
Football is going to be, bottom line, brutal for Chelsea's revenue. I will say, Todd Bowley, just God, the 3-0 Chelsea win prediction before. David, that was shocking. Why would you say that? Why would you? The story going around is taking strategic advice from James Corden. As time wound down, you're wondering why Chelsea fans are going to the game. The ones who sit
from Hammers fan James Corden,
just Chelsea fans sitting above Odd Todd's box started to rain down just admonishment upon their own owner. By the way, can you imagine everyone? And he engaged with them. Can you ever imagine berating Roman Abramovich? Just the very fear of what would happen to you next would be throat constricting. Oh, the good old days. Your Chelsea, essentially, the Daily Telegraph reporting that Odd Todd took the unorthodox step, let's say, of going into the Chelsea dressing room. This is amazing. Telling the players that their performances were, quote, embarrassing, and that he'd spent millions to build a winning side and that they were not living up to expectation. David, we often talk to footballers. I think we know them quite well. We know professional footballers find that kind of talk from a blowhard owner really inspiring, right?
Yeah, who's never kicked a football in his life. Yeah, it's going to be there. And look, and part of the, emblematic, symptomatic of all of the issues was watching, Hakim Ziyech run onto that field. A player who, by all accounts should have been off to PSG on loan. Just like, forget about everybody they bought. The greatest failure for me of this season is that their inability to ship anybody out at any point. And to watch Ziyech run on with absolutely no motivation to go and play decent football. There is not a performance anywhere on the field. I'm not saying that Mudryk was Chelsea's best player as a sort of a defense of Mudryk. I'm saying it as an indictment of Chelsea. It is just, there is no one on that team other than Enzo, who seems to be the only thing that is probably maybe worth buying.
The band's joke about Enzo is that he's had more hairstyles for Chelsea than wins, which is like genuinely both astonishing and true. Your team are
When has that been a legitimate criticism of a Premier League footballer, Rog? If we're going to say that you have to have more wins than hairstyles, we may as well stop following football.
Get me, Guzan. Just a no-nonsense footballer with an approach to hairstyles. By the way,
he still may have had more hairstyles.
Your team are lacking something that money can't buy, which ultimately is they've got no culture right now. And as a GFOP, Mr. New tweeted, God bless Burley, man spent $740 million for one goal in a month. Solid ROI. That's what will be in the PowerPoint, David.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think there's anything about football in the ROI or anything about football in the PowerPoint whatsoever, Rog. I think it's all about, unfortunately, I think it may all be about the Super League. Anyway, here we go. Wolves 2. This is happier news. Wolves 2. Brentford 0. A massive win for the boys from the Black Country here as they go 7 points clear of the relegation zone thanks to, wait for it, Rog, Diego Costa's first Premier League goal in 6 years. Not sure how much he knew about it. The most Diego Costa goal of all time as well. Having a defender sort of bank it off his wildly flailing leg, hairy leg, which was probably just trying to kick the defender himself. Substitute Hwang Hee-chan added a second. Wolves getting something of a rebirth under Julian Lopetegui as they've picked up 24 points from 16 games since the World Cup break.
Yeah, amazing. Brentford actually appear to be the latest in that slender mid-table to down tools, put on a pair of vacation Birkenstocks, but take nothing away from Wolves, or take nothing away really from Julian Lopetegui, who inherited Wolves as bottom of the table, impotent patsies, and has really dragged them by force of will, detailed determination to safety, and even gotten, yes, Diego Costa's farewell tour back on a score sheet. A fortunate strike, yes, but his first Premier League goal since May 21st, 2017, seeing him wheel away in celebration. It just brought back so many great memories for this podcast, Dave. Us joking that he likes to eat defenders' liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Oh, good times.
Yeah. Talking of good times, Rog, Southampton 0, Crystal Palace 2. It's Uncle Roy's world and we're all just living in it. An Eze double gives them their third win on the spin. That's the third straight since Hodgson took over, a stretch during which they've scored 9 goals, which is as many as they had netted in the previous 16 league games between November 22 and March 23 before Roy took the wheel. We laugh, but what a move this was to bring him back into the club.
Oh, the Roy Hodgson revolution has been one of the truest joys of this season. It really, the Norman Lear of English football is how I like to think of him, coming in, simplifying his team's football, giving everyone clear roles, just surfing a kind run of games, yes, to turn chaos into calm and glad all over resound again. Incredible to watch a Palace fan serenade him with Roy Hodgson, he's one of our own, and then morphing into Roy Hodgson's red and blue army. The same mouths that would never have believed this when he was appointed just over a month ago. And to do it with Zaha out, all the greater, Eze, been so key. 3 wins from 3 now. Still a mystery as to why Patrick Vieira didn't believe in the 24-year-old, but he's now, talked about as being on the cusp of England. He's played every minute of the Hodgson revolution. It's incredible man management by Roy, who said something lovely last week, Davo. He said, all we coaches are orchestra leaders. We know the music. We know all the notes, but the players have to play the tune.
Yeah, absolutely. You could see Roy turning up in tails and white tie in order to go and stand on the sideline. He'd look fantastic there with a little baton in his hand. I think it'd look so good. In a game that will kick off right about the time this pod is released, Leeds United host Liverpool, the former desperate to put some space between themselves and the bad place.
Yeah, my second son Bear said to me this morning as he left for school, he said, oh God, we've got to support Liverpool this afternoon, don't we? Really referring to, I guess, the fear of Leeds getting 3 points in the relegation race. And then he said, with real seriousness, he goes, Dad, do you think every team we support instantly becomes crap? He's like, Everton, White Sox, the Bears. He's like, should we support Leeds instead this afternoon? And he said it was such truth and pain, Davo, that I almost called child services myself.
What have you done? What have you done? Here we go, Rog. Everton 1, Fulham 3. The Cottagers come in off 5 straight losses, and they get right off the Premier League medicine that is Goodison Park. Harrison Reed put Fulham ahead, only for the player you've been calling Super Dwight McNeil all season, Rog. Never anything else. He pulled you mob level, but second half goals from Harry Wilson and Dan James complete the win for the visitors. They give Fulham a score sheet that resembles a list of all quiet on the Western Front extras, and they condemn your mob to a second straight defeat. They're winless and gasping for air just above the relegation zone waterline on goal difference alone.
Yeah, this is awful. I mean, remember Fulham, Mitrovic-less Fulham, 5 straight losses. This was meant to be an easy win. And God, the economists tell us there's no such thing as a free lunch. With Everton, we're never more vulnerable than against a team we're meant to cruise against. Yes, they have no striker, but we haven't had one all season. And so it came to pass, that agony.
Yeah, Everton are also Mitrovic-less.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we've been just like, since DCL realised he's just allergic to football, we've been dead and buried. In the first 20 minutes, we couldn't string a pass together. I watched the game back. I would have honestly made subs after about 12 minutes in this game, just brought on 5. So it was that kind of darkness, the kind of darkness that Everton fans who remember the team's low points in the 90s, that's when, this is what it felt like again, just pure, utter incompetent dross. And Fulham took advantage. Harry Wilson arcing a stunning shot off the post. Ginger Harrison Reed just slapping it home. On the rebound, Deitch changed the shape, kept things closer together. Passes started to snap a little bit, connect enough for Mope to miss sitters. But then Sean McNeil ran up the gut, slotted home, gave us that sweet old false hope. David, I was filming on Saturday morning in the city and I tuned in at half-time, 1-1, feverishly. Like Everton were playing better towards the end. I got a text from a bunch of people and I turned on the game and I believe, did I do this, David? Because Everton just evaporated.
I'm not going to put this one on you, Rog. I don't think this is in any way.
Serious.
I know you are, but that's what I'm saying. We can't put this on you. You can't put it on yourself. Everton were the architects of their own demise. Like all of that strength in the tackle, all of that hardness, all of that toughness, all of that playing behind. When you put in the tackles, when you go for the 50-50 balls, when you win the slop, Goodison will get behind you, and Everton just repeatedly failed on that on that basis.
I mean, that's a big point I'm worried about. Ultimately, in this game, we mope, really, which I believe is French for self-sabotage, missed all our chances. Fulham took all of theirs. Didn't really have to get out of second gear to pull us apart in the second half, right to left. Willian cushioning a delicious pass into the stride of former Liverpool prodigy Harry Wilson. Of course, first of the season for him, charity, aren't we? And then the game just became a shooting gallery. We were overwhelmed. The bittersweet experience of watching Anthony Robinson and Tim Ream tear us apart in the Merseyside sun. Dan James cut aside the left side of our back line. And I believe, Dave, is this a real rule that when Dan James scores against you, you're automatically relegated?
No, it's fortunately not. It has been mulled, but they've not introduced that yet.
Oh, it's like the NADS exemption.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it was. This was come to Goodison, pick up your 3 points. Really, what you said is the terrible truth of this. The feeling of doom that settled over Goodison Park. Remember, that was a bear pit when we were struggling last season. The old home stadium was our fortress, our hope. But people left, with 20 minutes, 25 minutes to go, bereft of hope. Just the Sean Dyche effect. Everton had won 6 points from his first 3 games, taken only 6 from the last 8. We were told Fulham were on their vacation. At Fulham FC USE tweeted me to say spring break officially over. I feel a doom, Davo. I really do. My dad left me on Friday, went back to Liverpool, and the last thing he said, he reiterated that point, how he feels about Everton, that when a friend tells you they have a terrible cancer, you just put your arm around them and say, I hope you go fast without pain. And that's how I feel, Davo. The Burnley friend of mine, Tony Pastor, texted me to say, God, if Dyche goes down twice in 2 years and we face Crystal Palace, hot shit, up next, and then, an IU on full blast, and then Newcastle, Anthony Gordon hat-trick guaranteed incoming.
Yeah, and then the biggest game, maybe the one after that, Rog, when they go to Leicester City on Monday, May 1st. That's a huge game.
Is it possible for both teams to lose?
No, that's actually not. But they may be mulling that exemption as well. Before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers this week. We're launching, as we said earlier, the Men in Blazers American Football Awards presented by Bud Light. Look for the nominees on our social today, Monday and tomorrow. And voting goes down this Friday exclusively in our Raven newsletter. There's the American Player of the Year, the player that the Americans are voting for, and the American Player of the Year, the American player that Americans are voting for. Subscribe at meninblazers.com. A quick shout out for a very special Do It Live going down this Wednesday after the US men's national team game, oddly scheduled, with El Tree.
Yeah, it's like about 2:00 in the morning, that one, I think. It's going to be a late night for never mind El Tree, it's a late night for El Rog.
yeah, the Continental Classico. Rog, can you finish us off with a toast?
Yeah, I want to raise this shot of Jägermeister, this ball of human emotion in a shot glass to French fans of Ligue 1's bottom team, Angers, who unleashed one of the most creative attempts I've ever seen to put off an opposing penalty taker in his stride. Clermont's Mohamed Chan stepped up to the spot to take a kick that will put his team 2-1 up. But the Angers fans dropped trow. And let's just say, they all looked, and I don't know how you say this in French, as if they were going commando. Chan trusted in his crack shot, as opposed to the other kinds of cracks, which were suddenly very much in evidence all around the stadium. He lashed the ball home, gave his side the win, and poor Angers, remain at the derriere of League One. I just imagine Newcastle fans looking at that clip and getting all kinds of ideas, Davo, and I dread all that is to come.
Absolutely, Rog. You can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies, at Rog Bennett on Instagram, at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies on Facebook, Men in Blazers on Twitch, twitch.tv/Men in Blazers. We're on YouTube. You can see a video version of our podcast, including this podcast, when we release in full. Do not miss that. Also, at TikTok, look for it at Men in Blazers. You can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com. Venderpunk, Rog.
War Pig!
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Ball to win.
Take that, Gloria.
Ball to lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight in America. Love you, Dave.
Love you, Roger.
Oh, I love your idea of a NADS exemption. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.